The Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics just executed 3 search warrants in 1 week and walked away with nearly 68,000 plants. That number is not a typo, and it is not an exaggeration. 68,000 plants removed from the supply chain in a single coordinated enforcement blitz across multiple counties. Stay with us because we are going to break down each of these operations in detail, explain what this enforcement environment means for every licensed operator in Oklahoma, and give you the practical takeaway that could save your business from becoming the next target. Before we get into it, if you never want to miss OBN compliance news, please support us by giving us a like and comment. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications. It's free and really helps. We are hearing chatter that this week represents one of the largest coordinated enforcement efforts OBN has conducted in recent memory. Industry sources are telling us the scale of these operations has operators across Oklahoma paying very close attention to what comes next. And if you are a licensed operator in this state, you should be paying attention too. Let us start with the biggest story because the numbers alone are staggering. OBN agents executed a search warrant at a location in Wetumpka, down in Hughes County. What they found inside was a massive unlicensed cultivation operation. Agents seized nearly 50,000 plants in that single raid. To put that in perspective, that is more plants than many licensed operators grow in an entire year of production. The facility was so large it required significant law enforcement resources just to process and remove the crop. Agents spent hours documenting everything, cataloging the plants, and coordinating the destruction process. This was not a quick in-and-out operation. It was a major undertaking that consumed substantial enforcement resources and coordination across multiple agencies. There are details still emerging about this operation, but what we do know is that it represents the single largest plant seizure among this week's 3 enforcement actions. The Hughes County bust alone would have been a headline-grabbing story. But it was only the beginning of what turned out to be a very busy week for OBN enforcement teams. When you see an operation of this scale, it tells you that OBN had been investigating this location for a while. These warrants do not happen overnight. They require surveillance, intelligence gathering, coordination with prosecutors, and careful planning. The fact that they hit this location this week means it had been a target for some time. The investigation likely involved months of work before the warrant was ever signed, and the resources committed to this single operation tell you that OBN considered it a priority target worth every hour of preparation. Next up, in Osage County, OBN partnered with the Osage County Sheriff's Office on a separate search warrant that targeted another unlicensed grow operation. That operation yielded just under 13,000 plants. Specifically, 12,899 plants were seized during that coordinated action. The partnership between OBN and local law enforcement here is worth noting because it suggests these are not isolated incidents. They are part of a broader, coordinated enforcement strategy that involves multiple agencies working together across jurisdictional lines. When state narcotics bureaus and county sheriff's offices collaborate on search warrants, it indicates a level of interagency communication that did not exist a few years ago. This is a sign that enforcement coordination in Oklahoma is maturing and becoming more effective. The Osage County operation also highlights something else important. Local sheriff's offices are increasingly willing to partner with OBN on enforcement actions. That means the enforcement net is widening. It is not just state agents conducting these operations. Local law enforcement is actively participating, which increases the total enforcement capacity across the state. Operators who thought they only had to worry about state-level inspections need to understand that local law enforcement is now part of the equation. This partnership model means there are more eyes on the industry than ever before. And when multiple agencies share intelligence, the visibility into what is happening on the ground increases dramatically. And then there was a third operation this week. OBN's dedicated enforcement units executed another search warrant that resulted in approximately 5,000 plants being seized and at least one individual being taken into custody. That brings the 7-day total to nearly 68,000 plants removed from illegal operations across Oklahoma. The arrest component of this third operation is also significant. It turns out that OBN is not just seizing plants, they are making criminal referrals and pursuing charges. That raises the stakes considerably for anyone operating outside the regulatory framework. An arrest means this case is going through the criminal justice system, which means court appearances, potential jail time, and a permanent criminal record. It also means OBNAD is building a track record of prosecutions that could deter future unlicensed operators and send a message to the entire industry. When you step back and look at what happened this week, the pattern becomes clear. 3 separate search warrants, 3 different counties, nearly 70,000 plants seized. One coordinated enforcement effort that demonstrates OBN has both the resources and the mandate to conduct large-scale operations across the state simultaneously. This is not a random series of unrelated busts. This is a coordinated enforcement blitz that sends a clear message about where OBN's priorities are. And that message is that enforcement is active, it is coordinated, and it is not slowing down. Anyone operating outside the regulatory framework in Oklahoma right now is taking an enormous risk. Now here's where this gets personal for every licensed operator watching this. When enforcement ramps up this dramatically, it never stays contained to just illegal operations. The logic is straightforward. Law enforcement agencies that invest significant resources in enforcement operations expect to demonstrate results. That means increased scrutiny across the board. More inspections, more compliance checks, more attention to detail at every level of the supply chain. The same intelligence gathering capabilities that OBN used to find these unlicensed operations can also be applied to identifying compliance issues at licensed facilities. The tools are the same. The targets may eventually shift or broaden. We are hearing chatter from operators who are concerned about what this means for their businesses. And they have good reason to be concerned. When the enforcement environment heats up, the margin for errors shrinks. An inventory discrepancy that might have been overlooked in a quieter regulatory environment suddenly becomes a major issue. A Metrc reporting error that used to get a warning now triggers a deeper investigation. A waste disposal record that is missing a signature becomes a compliance violation that could result in a fine or worse. Small mistakes that used to be harmless become potential liabilities. And the stress of knowing that enforcement is active and looking for problems only adds to the pressure that operators already feel. Think about what a compliance inspection actually looks at in practice. Inspectors verify that the plants in your grow match what is recorded in your inventory system. They check that your labels match your manifests. They review your waste disposal records to make sure destroyed plants were properly documented. They audit your transportation manifests to verify that every shipment leaving your facility is accounted for. They check your security footage to confirm that access logs match your employee records. They review your visitor logs to make sure everyone who entered the facility was properly documented. They inspect your storage areas to confirm that product quantities match what is in the system. They pull random samples and trace them back through the supply chain to verify every transfer and transaction. Any gap between what the system says and what is actually on site becomes a problem. And in an enforcement environment like this one, problems get escalated quickly. The reality is that most compliance issues are not the result of intentional wrongdoing. They are the result of manual processes that are prone to human error. An employee forgets to scan a plant tag during a busy harvest day. A weight gets entered incorrectly because someone was rushing. A disposal form gets filed in the wrong folder. A shipping manifest gets lost before it is entered into the system. A harvest date gets recorded incorrectly because the person entering the data was distracted. These small errors add up over time. And when an inspector shows up and finds discrepancies, they do not care whether the error was intentional or accidental. The discrepancy is the problem, and the operator bears the consequences. A fine, a suspension, or worse. This is why the smartest operators in Oklahoma are the ones who treat compliance as a daily operation rather than a periodic exercise. They do not wait for inspection season to clean up their records. They do not rely on manual audits that take days to complete. They automate as much of the compliance process as possible so that their records are always accurate and always inspection ready. They use tools that give them real-time visibility into their compliance status so they can catch issues before an inspector does. They run internal audits on a regular schedule to identify gaps before someone else finds them. This is not about being paranoid. It is about being prepared. The operators who survive enforcement waves are the ones who have their compliance systems locked down before the inspectors show up. The ones who can point to clean records and accurate inventory data. The ones who treat compliance as a daily operation, not something they think about once a quarter. In the current enforcement environment, that distinction could be the difference between staying open and facing a potentially business-ending compliance action. The operators who are inspection-ready at all times are the ones who sleep well at night. So here is the question that every licensed operator in Oklahoma needs to ask themselves. If OBN can coordinate 3 simultaneous operations across 3 counties in a single week, pulling in local sheriff's offices and other resources, how long before that same level of coordinated enforcement gets applied to compliance inspections of licensed operations? Is there really a firewall between going after unlicensed grows and putting more pressure on every operator in the state? The answer is no. There is no firewall. When enforcement resources increase across the board, everyone feels the impact. Licensed operators who are doing everything right should have nothing to hide. But even compliant operators can get caught in the dragnet if their paperwork is not perfect, if their inventory numbers do not match exactly, if their compliance records have gaps that an inspector can exploit. The difference between a clean inspection and a problematic one often comes down to how well your records hold up under scrutiny. And in an environment where enforcement is ramping up, scrutiny is only going to increase. The operators who prepare now will be the ones who come through the other side stronger. This is not a prediction of doom. It is a reality check. The operators who treat this enforcement activity as a wake-up call will be the ones who come out stronger. The ones who ignore it are taking a risk that is not worth taking. The enforcement environment in Oklahoma is changing. The question is whether you are changing with it. If you want to avoid costly fines and shutdowns, contact us using the link below to find out how Trish can automate your compliance daily. Have you had a compliance visit from OBN or OMA this year? Tell us what happened and what they focused on in the comments. Your experience could help another operator prepare for what is coming. Read the full breakdown of today's news at ai-antidote.us. The link is in the description.